My name's Huseyin Djemil, and what am I? I'm someone in recovery. I'm the director of Green Apple Consulting, and Towards Recovery is an initiative that we started as part of Green Apple Consulting in 2012, and we hold a monthly recovery cafe here in Henley. We do an annual conference. This is our third conference. Yeah. Henley, I suppose, because I live in Henley, it's a little bit convenient. I'm not from Henley, but I've been living in Henley now for 20 something years. I have a family in Henley. Henley's where I am now. So we became aware that we needed to have more of a visible recovery community in Henley, because we understood, we were told about some of the problems that there were in Henley, and we thought, well, actually, by making ourselves visible, we could be part of the solution. So that's why we started. I suppose the cafe, it's a monthly affair. We rent a coffee shop from a church in Henley. The highlights from that are basically someone comes every month. It's not just us sitting there sort of opening the doors wondering what's going to happen, but people come. It's a safe place for people in recovery. Whilst we don't offer any meetings or any interventions within the recovery cafe environment, people tend to sit in twos and threes and have conversations, and those conversations often lead to something positive. So we've seen people find work, we've seen people get help, we've seen people get housing, we've seen people get information and expertise that helps them to move forward. All sorts of things happen, and all we really do is open the doors and offer coffee and cake, and increasingly we're doing juicing and we're doing more healthy stuff, and I guess looking forward we want to do more of that. From the cafe perspective, we don't have any funding. We don't ask for money really. We actually started. I put 1/4 of my yearly expenses into the recovery cafe to start it off, but it's actually quite low maintenance. We spend about £1,200 a year running the cafe, and we run about the same to run the conference annually. And we find that because we're in recovery, we can meet those costs generally ourselves, and that supports a number of events through the year as well. In terms of funded activity, we sit alongside a lot of paid-for services. Often those services come to the cafe, they send people to the cafe, and they get benefit from the cafe. I would go as far as to say that in some cases we help to amplify the outcomes of those services, although we don't try and mimic them. Increasingly we find services are under pressure to do more for less, or at least more for the same in terms of their funding, whereas we don't seem to have that issue, because we don't get any money from anyone that's significant. No one can turn the tap off for us, so we tend to just work as we want to work. Yeah. We do work with anyone. We're not trying to own that recovery journey. A lot of services sometimes can be guilty of this, because they build such trust and rapport with a client. They often see the client as theirs, and they then often as well, because they're trying to help that person move forward in their life, you sometimes see that they kind of get pushed in one direction or another. We say to people, it doesn't matter how you find recovery, it doesn't matter how you initiate it, it doesn't matter how you maintain it, we're just actually in recovery. And what we want to do is see people get better, progress, become valuable members of society and fulfil their potential. And whether that's through 12-step, whether that's through smart recovery, whether that's through a rehab placement, whether it's they do it themselves, in the community without too much help from formal treatment services, we don't mind. What we do is we say, actually, we're all in this together and we're all broadly moving in the same direction. Let's help each other. And I think one of the things we found is helping other people keeps us well. So people often think, oh, the recovery cafe is really good. You're really good for doing something like that. Well, actually, it's quite. Sometimes the motivation can be quite selfish. I know that if I do something for someone else, I feel good about myself. If we want to have good self-esteem, we've got to do things that are estimable. We've actually got. If we help someone, then in that equation, the giver gets something and all, as well as the person receiving it. So we're all for that. Money is a big part of service delivery at the moment. We are in an austerity times of austerity, and actually, what services are trying to address? They're trying to address the need that people have in terms of drug and alcohol use. But often, that, as Phil said when he was talking earlier today, often people's addictions are manifestations of problems that go a lot deeper, and so services and anyone trying to help someone with an addiction has got to come at it from a multifaceted point of view. It's not just about trying to solve the addiction problem. It might be about trying to get them back into work. It might be about trying to repair relationships, build trust. Those sort of things, they're not, necessarily therapeutic things that need to be fixed in the person. They're things that are, kind of outward manifestations that they're better. And so working in as broad a way as you can, trying to mainstream people back into society is often the answer, rather than, kind of put them into a specialist treatment bubble. We need to try and get people to progress and to get better and to get off benefits, to get a job, to, kind of get back together with their families, make amends where they need to, live honest, fruitful lives, not be scared about disclosing about their past, generally trying to, kind of live right again, I suppose. And now our role in that is often quite small, but what we do can often have massive impact. So even though you might have very expensive specialist treatment services, sometimes they can't crack these nuts because they don't see it in the way that we see it. They are operating within a sort of framework that maybe doesn't give them as much leeway to do the sort of things that we would want to do. They can't be as creative and as maverick about some of the things they do because they've got public money being pushed into them. What we say is actually a lot of those services and a lot of the people that commission those services need to look at organisations like ours and grassroots organisations and try and leverage what we can do into the equation. Because if you're going to reduce the money for specialist services, for instance, which seems to be the trend, then we need to start to maybe have some seed money and some seed investments into some of these sort of organisations that can help redress the balance, because we can go a lot further with a small amount of money than a specialist treatment can with large amounts of money. We can almost do what they do, but in a different way. It's in a non-professional, unprofessionalised way, but it's still effective. So. We run it on the last Thursday of every month. It's from 7:30 at night till 10 o'clock at night. Anyone can come if you're in recovery from addiction. We don't specify the addiction. If you're supporting someone's journey in recovery, or even through active addiction or through treatment, then come. We can either you'll find a welcome, but we can also put you in touch with others that can help. We see people that are stable in recovery, that are quite new to recovery. We do like to talk in terms of recovery rather than addiction, moreover, because it's about learning to live again. So, we've also had treatment professionals coming. We've had people from treatment professionals from the local prison come in. We've had all sorts, and we find that that kind of mix really helps people in terms of seeing life and recovery from someone else's point of view.